Ethan wasn't sure what he expected when he arrived at the space station. He had been selected for a special mission, a mission to build peace between humans and several alien species. He'd trained for months, learned the customs of alien cultures, and studied their languages. But nothing could prepare him for the moment he would first step into the heart of the galaxy. The station was busy, a maze of corridors filled with alien diplomats and military officers. Humans weren't the dominant species here, but the station was one of the few places where many different species met. Ethan felt like a small fish in a vast ocean, trying his best not to stand out too much. His job was simple: help with negotiations and be a bridge between Earth and the other civilizations. But he was nervous. What if he said the wrong thing? What if the aliens didn't like humans at all? As he walked down one of the main hallways, his heart racing with the thought of his first official meeting, didn't notice the alien in front of him. He was focused on a small datapad in his hands, checking the latest briefing. His foot caught the edge of something, and before he knew it, he had crashed into someone. Oh, the voice came from the other side. It wasn't human, but it sounded calm and composed. Unlike Ethan's own startled gasp, Ethan immediately looked up, his face red with embarrassment. Standing before him was an alien girl, no taller than him, but with an air of confidence that made her seem much taller. Her skin was a soft, pale lavender, and her large eyes shone with a deep silvery hue. Her hair was long and flowed like liquid, moving as if it were part of the air itself. "I'm so sorry," Ethan stammered, his face still burning with shame. "I wasn't looking where I was going." The alien girl smiled, though it wasn't an expression of kindness. It was something else, something mysterious. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment Ethan could have sworn she looked straight into his soul. It was an uncomfortable feeling, as if she could see into the deepest parts of his mind. "No harm done," she said softly, her voice calm and measured. "You should watch where you're going, human." Ethan blinked, not sure what to say. The way she said human made him feel even more out of place. He quickly tried to recover, standing a little straighter, had to make a good impression. This was a peace mission, after all. Couldn't afford to embarrass himself already. "I'm Ethan," he said, extending his hand awkwardly. The alien girl looked at his hand for a moment before shaking it gently. Her grip was firm, and for some reason, Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange energy pass between them. It was almost as if her touch sent a small shiver through him, like something powerful and unspoken had just passed. "I'm Zira," she replied, her voice smooth like velvet. Ethan tried to smile, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Zira was watching him too closely, as if she was waiting for something. Maybe he was imagining it, but it seemed like her eyes lingered on him just a moment longer than necessary. "Well, I guess I'll be seeing you around," Ethan said, stepping back. Still unsure of himself, Zira nodded, but her gaze didn't leave him. Ethan quickly turned to walk away, but as he did, he couldn't help but feel her presence behind him, following his every step. He tried to shake off the feeling, reminding himself that this was just a simple accident. It was nothing more than a mistake. Still, something about their brief encounter left him unsettled. As he walked down the hallway toward the briefing room, he couldn't stop thinking about Zira. He couldn't explain why, but his thoughts kept drifting back to her. There was something about her, something about the way she looked at him that made his heart race a little faster. It wasn't just her beauty. There was a sense of power in her, something almost otherworldly. And in that moment, he realized something strange. Zira wasn't just a random alien. She was different. Later that evening, Ethan sat alone in his quarters, reviewing the notes for his first official meeting the next day. But despite his best efforts to focus, his thoughts kept wandering back to Zira. What was it about her that had made him feel so strange? Was it just her appearance, or was there something else going on? He tried to shake off the feeling and focus on the mission. After all, the fate of peace between the species was in his hands. There was no room for distractions, especially from someone as mysterious as Zira. But no matter how hard he tried, his thoughts wouldn't stop. Over the next few days, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of Zira's presence. Every time he walked through the station, he would catch glimpses of her silvery eyes watching him from a distance. It wasn't as if she was following him. At least he didn't think so, but every time they crossed paths, she seemed to notice him, as though she was aware of his every movement. It was strange. The peace mission was important, and Ethan tried to focus on his tasks, but Zira was never far from his thoughts. Her calm demeanor, her mysterious smile, and that unsettling feeling whenever she looked at him. Ethan tried to ignore it, but it was hard. The more he worked with her, the more he realized how little he understood about her. Their first official meeting together was scheduled a few days later. The two of them were asked to join a council of various alien representatives to discuss the future of the peace talks. Ethan felt nervous. The room was filled with powerful beings, some humanoid, some not. The atmosphere was tense, and everyone seemed to have their own agenda. But Zira seemed completely at ease. She moved through the crowd like she belonged, never once showing any signs of nerves. As the meeting began, Ethan took a seat beside Zira. She didn't acknowledge him at first. Her attention fixed on the council, but as the discussions began, Ethan couldn't help but notice how Zira seemed to be able to predict what everyone was going to say. Every time someone made a statement, she would nod slightly before they spoke, as if she knew exactly what was coming. It was almost as if she could hear their thoughts before they said anything. Ethan felt a strange sense of discomfort. He didn't know if it was his own nervousness or the fact that he was sitting next to someone who seemed to know everything. But the feeling wouldn't go away. After the meeting ended, Zira stood and turned to Ethan, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment. "You did well," she said, her voice smooth and calm. "Thanks," Ethan replied, unsure of what to say. Wanted to ask her how she seemed, to know exactly what was going to happen during the meeting, but something told him it wasn't the right time. As they walked down the hallway, Zira remained silent for a while, her pace steady and measured. Ethan hesitated, trying to think of something to break the silence. "Zira," he began, his voice a little unsure, "how did you know what was going to happen in there? It's like you already knew what everyone was going to say." Zira glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "I didn't know," she said softly. "I just sensed it." "Sensed it?" Ethan repeated, confused. "What do you mean?" Zira stopped walking for a moment, turning to face him. "I'm not like you, Ethan," she said, her voice gentle, yet firm. "I have the ability to connect with people on a deeper level. It's not something I control, it's just there." Ethan blinked, trying to make sense of her words. "Are you saying you can read minds?" Zira's gaze softened. "In a way, yes. But it's not always clear, and it's not always what people expect. I don't know everything that goes on in someone's mind, but I can sense emotions, intentions, and self. Sometimes, even thoughts." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors of aliens with psychic abilities, but hearing Zira speak about it so casually made him feel uneasy. "So you knew what I was thinking in there?" Zira's lips curved into a small, mysterious smile. "I heard a few things," she said, her voice almost teasing. "But don't worry, Ethan. It's nothing you should be ashamed of." Ethan froze, his face going pale. He didn't want to ask, but he had to. "What did you hear?" Zira's smile widened, and for the first time, Ethan felt that same strange sense of power coming from her. She wasn't trying to scare him, but she knew something that he didn't. "I heard you wondering if I was reading your mind," she said softly. "I also heard some thoughts about the peace talks. I'm sure you were nervous, wondering if you could make a good impression. You were thinking about the importance of the mission." Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He was surprised that she had caught his thoughts about the mission. But the other thoughts, the ones about her, he didn't know if he could face her now. He had been thinking about how mysterious she was, how much he wanted to know about her. And yes, about how attractive she was. "I didn't mean to," he started. But Zira raised her hand to stop him. "Don't worry," she said calmly. "I'm used to it. Humans and other species have a lot of complicated thoughts. It's natural." Ethan's face turned even redder, and he quickly looked down at his feet, feeling embarrassed. "I'm sorry," he muttered, wishing the ground would swallow him whole. Zira's laugh was soft and surprisingly gentle. "There's no need to apologize, Ethan. You're not the first human to think about things like that, and you won't be the last." The way she said it made Ethan feel both better and worse at the same time. On the one hand, Zira didn't seem bothered by his thoughts. But on the other hand, her knowing smile made him feel like she was always one step ahead of him, as they continued walking through the station. Ethan tried to focus on something else, anything else, but it was hard. His mind kept racing back to Zira's words. She could sense things. She could read his thoughts. Was she using her abilities on him right now? Was it just that she understood people better than he ever could? There was so much he didn't know about her, and that only made him more curious and scared. The days that followed were a blur for Ethan. Every time he saw Zira, he felt a strange mix of curiosity and unease. It was hard to concentrate on anything else when she was around. Her ability to read minds or sense emotions made Ethan feel exposed. He couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more about him than he was willing to admit, and it made him more nervous than he cared to admit. The peace talks continued, and Ethan's role was becoming more important with each passing day. As the human representative, he had to balance the interests of Earth with the needs of the other alien species. It was a delicate task, and he often found himself alone with Zira, trying to figure out how to move the talks forward without angering anyone. She had become his most trusted ally. But it wasn't just her skills that made her valuable. It was her mysterious understanding of everything around her. One evening, after a long and tiring day of negotiations, Ethan found himself walking down the hallway to his quarters. His thoughts were consumed by the upcoming meeting. He was nervous. The future of the peace talks depended on how he handled the next session. But as he rounded the corner, he spotted Zira standing alone near a window, looking out at the stars. She didn't hear him approach, so he stood there for a moment, just watching her. There was something calming about the way she stood there, as if she was part of the universe itself, connected to everything around her. Ethan didn't know why, but he felt drawn to her. Zira. He called out softly, unsure if she had even heard him. Zira turned, her silver eyes meeting his with an unreadable expression. She smiled slightly, but there was something different about her smile this time, something more genuine. "Ethan," she said, her voice low and calm. "I was waiting for you." Ethan raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Waiting for me? Why?" Zira stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. "I think we need to talk." Ethan's heart raced a little. Wasn't sure why, but something about the way she said it made him nervous. He had a feeling that this wasn't going to be just another casual conversation. "Talk about what?" he asked, trying to sound casual, though his voice betrayed his nervousness. Zira didn't immediately respond. Instead, she looked out at the stars for a moment before turning back to him. "About what's been on your mind." Ethan felt his face turn red. How did she know? He didn't want to admit it, but he knew that Zira had been reading his thoughts. Since the moment they met, every time they worked together, every time they had a conversation, felt like she was always a step ahead, always knowing what he was thinking before he even said it. "I'm not sure what you mean," he replied. Avoiding her gaze, Zira's smile softened, and she took a step closer to him. "You know exactly what I mean. I've been sensing what's been going on in your mind. You've been worried. You've been anxious about the mission, about the talks. You've been wondering if you're enough. You've also been thinking about me." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He looked up at her, unable to speak for a moment. His mind raced. He had tried so hard to hide his thoughts, but Zira seemed to know everything. She had always known. "I didn't mean to," he started.
Yes.
But Zira raised a hand to stop him. "There's no need to apologize, Ethan," she said softly, her voice full of understanding. "I know you didn't mean to. I don't mind. In fact, it's natural." Ethan felt a mix of relief and embarrassment. It was true. He had been thinking about Zira a lot lately, about her abilities, about her calmness, and yes, about how attractive she was. But there was so much more than just that. He admired her intelligence, her strength, and the way she carried herself with such confidence. She was so different from anyone he had ever met. It scared him. "I don't understand you," Ethan admitted, his voice quiet. "I don't understand how you can just know everything. It's like you can see right through me." Zira's eyes softened. "I don't see right through you, Ethan. I can only sense what you're willing to show." Your thoughts, your emotions. They're all part of who you are. But I don't use them against you. I'm not here to control you. Ethan looked at her, his mind racing. But it feels like you know everything. You always know what I'm thinking. Zira nodded, but her expression remained calm. It's a gift, Ethan, but it doesn't make me better than you. It just makes me different. I can't control your thoughts. I can only sense them. And sometimes, I can choose to listen, or I can choose to ignore them. Ethan felt his heart settle a little. He wasn't sure why, but hearing her say that made him feel a little more at ease. Maybe it wasn't as bad as he had thought. Maybe Zira wasn't using her abilities to manipulate him. She was just ... different, and that was okay. Don't know if I'm ready for this, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Zira tilted her head slightly. Ready for what? To work with you like this? Ethan explained. To have someone know what I'm thinking all the time. It's a lot. Zira studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. I understand. It's not easy. But I can promise you this, Ethan. I won't use what I know against you. I only want to help. Ethan sighed, his nerves easing slightly. He had been afraid that Zira would use her abilities to control him or manipulate him into making decisions. But now, hearing her speak, he began to realize that she wasn't like that. She was different, but she wasn't a threat, I guess. I guess I can trust you, Ethan said, his voice growing more confident. But you'll have to promise me something. You'll have to promise me that you won't read my mind without asking first, he said, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Zira's eyes sparkled with amusement. I think I can manage that. For the first time since they had met, Ethan felt like he could relax. Maybe, just maybe, things would work out after all. The days after Ethan's conversation with Zira felt different. He was still adjusting to the idea that someone could know so much about him without him saying a word, but he also began to feel a little lighter, a little freer. Zira had promised. She wouldn't use her abilities to invade his mind, and for the first time, Ethan believed her. The peace talks were moving forward, but slowly. Tensions between the alien factions were high, and every word, every gesture seemed to carry more weight than usual. Ethan worked tirelessly with the other delegates, trying to find common ground. But there was always a sense of uncertainty in the air. Would they reach an agreement? Or would they walk away from the table and risk all-out conflict? Zira was there with him, guiding him, offering advice when needed. She wasn't just his ally in the peace talks. She had become his anchor. Even when things felt hopeless, she remained calm, her confidence a steady presence that kept Ethan grounded. One evening, as the sun set outside the space station, Ethan found himself sitting alone in the observation room. He watched the stars for a long time, lost in his thoughts. There was something beautiful about the vastness of space, something that made all his worries seem so small in comparison. At the same time, it felt lonely. The future of the galaxy rested on his shoulders, and sometimes it felt like too much to bear. You're not alone, you know. Ethan turned around, startled to see Zira standing in the doorway. He hadn't heard her approach. She had a way of moving so silently, so gracefully, that he often didn't notice her until she was right there. I know, Ethan said, forcing a smile. I just ... needed a moment to think. Zira stepped into the room and took a seat next to him. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, watching the stars with him. Ethan appreciated her silence. Sometimes it felt like she understood him better than he understood himself. After a while, Zira spoke again, her voice soft but firm. You're carrying a lot of weight, Ethan. I can sense it. Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair. I guess I am. It's just ... It's a lot. Sometimes I feel like I'm not enough to make a difference. Zira turned to face him, her silver eyes meeting his. That's not true. You're doing more than most people could. You're not alone in this. You have me, and you have the support of the entire human race. Ethan glanced at her, feeling a warmth spread through him. I'm glad you're here, he said quietly. I don't think I'd be able to do this without you. Zira smiled. But it wasn't her usual teasing smile. This one was softer, more genuine. You're stronger than you think, Ethan, and you have a lot more people backing you than you realize. You just have to trust in yourself. Ethan nodded, but doubt still lingered in the back of his mind. He wanted to believe her. He really did. But there were so many things he didn't understand, so many challenges he wasn't sure how to face. He had always thought of himself as someone who could handle pressure, but now it felt like the weight of the entire galaxy was pressing down on him. "Do you ever feel like you're not enough?" Ethan asked, his voice quieter now. Zero looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "Sometimes. But that's when I remind myself that I don't have to do everything alone. We all have limits. Even me." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You? The one who can read minds and sense emotions?" "I find that hard to believe." Zira chuckled softly. "I may be able to sense things, but that doesn't mean I have all the answers. I can't control everything. There are things that are out of my reach, just like you. That's why we need to trust each other." Ethan thought about her words for a moment. It was true. He'd been so focused on the idea of carrying the burden alone that he had forgotten about the people who were there to help him. Zero wasn't just a mind reader. She was a partner, an equal. And he had to trust her, just as she trusted him. "I've been trying to do everything by myself," Ethan admitted. "I thought I had to. But maybe I don't. Maybe I just need..." Tio let go a little. Zero smiled. "That's a good start. It's okay to ask for help, Ethan. It's okay to trust others. You don't have to do everything on your own." Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. It was like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Maybe he had been carrying too much all along. He didn't have to face the challenges alone. And with Zira by his side, maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference. As they sat together in silence, watching the stars, Ethan realized something else. The peace talks, the mission, and the future of the galaxy weren't just about politics or diplomacy. They were about people, about trust, about connection. And for the first time since arriving at the space station, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The days grew more intense as the peace talks entered their final stages. The pressure was mounting. The alien factions were divided, each one holding tightly to their own interests, unwilling to let go. The room where the meetings took place had become a battlefield in itself. Words were weapons, and every statement could change the course of history. Ethan spent long hours in the conference room, surrounded by the representatives of different species. It felt like every conversation carried more weight than the last. One wrong word, one misplaced gesture, and everything they had worked for could fall apart. The tension in the air was thick. Ethan could feel the strain in his chest with each passing day. Zero remained by his side through it all. She was calm as always, her presence a steadying force. But even with her near him, Ethan couldn't shake the growing sense of uncertainty. He had come to rely on Zira's ability to read the emotions and thoughts of those around them. But now, in the most critical moment of the peace talks, he wasn't sure he could trust anyone. As the days wore on, Ethan found himself staying up. Later, poring over notes and diplomatic strategies, trying to find a way to break the deadlock. The situation was delicate, and it felt like they were teetering on the edge of disaster. Every time he thought they were close to a solution, another conflict would arise, and everything would fall apart again. One evening, after another exhausting meeting, Ethan retreated to his quarters, feeling defeated. Had begun to feel unbearable. He sat on his bed, staring at the stars through the window. The lights of distant planets twinkling far away. Zero had always been there, always calm, always understanding. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from him. There were moments when he would catch her looking at him with an expression that was almost unreadable, as if she knew something he didn't. It was the same feeling he had gotten from her when they first met, when she seemed to know more about him than he had expected. But now, the unease was growing. He couldn't ignore it anymore. The door to his quarters opened softly, and Zira stepped inside. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there looking at him. Her eyes were as calm as ever, but Ethan could sense that something had changed. "Zira," Ethan said quietly, his voice hesitant. Is there something you're not telling me? Zero didn't immediately respond. She stood there for a long moment, as if deciding whether or not to speak. Ethan's heart raced in his chest, and he found himself holding his breath. He had to know. He had to understand what was going on. Ethan, Zero finally said, her voice softer than usual. There are things I haven't shared with you. Things that I've been keeping from you for a reason. Ethan stood up, his eyes wide. What do you mean? What are you hiding? Zero walked over to him, her steps deliberate and slow. It's not something I wanted to burden you with, but I think it's time you knew. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The air between them felt heavy, and he could feel his anxiety building. What is it, Zero? What have you been hiding? Zero took a deep breath before speaking again. I'm not just a psychic, Ethan. I'm not just here to help with the peace talks. I have a deeper connection to this mission. Something that goes beyond anything you know. Ethan frowned, confused. What do you mean? How is this connected to the peace talks? Zero looked away for a moment, her gaze turning to the window, as if lost in thought. I've been tasked with more than just assisting you. I've been sent to make sure the peace talks succeed. ... No matter what. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had known there was something more to Zero than just a mind reader. But this was different. What do you mean, no matter what? What are you saying? Zero turned back to him, her silver eyes meeting his with an intensity he hadn't seen before. I'm here to ensure the survival of my people, and the peace talks are just a small part of that. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. What does that mean for me? For the mission? Zero's expression softened, and she stepped closer to him. It means that I've been working to make sure you succeed, but it also means that I've been keeping certain things from you. I had to, because if you knew everything, you might have acted differently. Ethan's mind was spinning. So you've been manipulating me all this time? Zero shook her head, her gaze never leaving his. No, I've never manipulated you, Ethan. I've only guided you. I've only tried to help you see what you need to see, but there's more at stake than you realize. Ethan felt a weight in his chest, a mix of confusion, betrayal, and fear. You've known everything about me, about the mission. You didn't tell me. Zero stepped back, her eyes softening. I had to protect you, Ethan. There are forces at work, here forces, beyond your control. But I'm not your enemy. I'm here to help. Everything I've done has been for the good of the mission, for the good of the galaxy. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. It was hard to process everything she had just said. He had trusted her, had come to rely on her. But now he felt like the ground beneath him had shifted. I don't know what to think anymore, Ethan said, his voice quiet. Zero's expression softened further, and she took a step toward him. I understand, this is a lot to take in. You're not alone, Ethan. You never have been. Ethan looked into her eyes, trying to understand the truth of what she had said. It was a lot to process, but one thing was clear. Zero was not the person he had thought she was. She was more, and yet she was still on his side. He didn't know what the future held for them, or for the peace talks. But one thing was certain. He wasn't alone anymore. The peace talks were entering their final phase, and the pressure on Ethan had never been greater. The galaxy's future rested on the delicate balance of negotiations, and every word spoken in the council room could determine whether peace would be achieved or war would break out. Ethan felt the weight of it all, his thoughts consumed by the responsibility he carried. Yet amid the chaos, there was one thing that remained constant. Zero. Zero had always been there for him, guiding him through the toughest moments, offering her wisdom and support. Her calm presence had kept him grounded when everything else seemed to be spiraling out of control. But the conversation they had shared in his quarters a few nights ago had left Ethan with more questions than answers. Zero had revealed that she was not just there to help with the peace talks. She had a deeper connection to the mission, one that involved the survival of her people. Ethan didn't know what to make of it. On one hand, he trusted Zero completely. She had never steered him wrong, and everything she had done had been for the good of the mission. On the other hand, the idea that she had been keeping secrets from him made him feel uneasy. What else had she been hiding? And more importantly, what did her true role mean for their future? As he walked to the meeting room the next day, Ethan found his mind racing. The talks had reached a crucial point. A decision had to be made. Would the alien factions agree to the terms that had been set, or would they walk away and risk all-out conflict? The room was filled with tension, the air thick with uncertainty. The representatives from each faction were on edge, their eyes darting from one delegate to the next, each waiting for the other to make the first move. Ethan took his seat at the table, his eyes scanning the room. He could feel the weight of every gaze upon him. The fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders. The negotiations were difficult, the discussions heated, but through it all, Ethan could feel Zara's steady presence beside him, her calm demeanor. A source of strength. As the negotiations continued, Ethan found himself growing more and more frustrated. The factions were unwilling to budge on key issues, and the discussions seemed to be going nowhere. He could see it in their eyes, the distrust, the fear, the desire for power. Each faction believed it had the right to control the galaxy, and none were willing to compromise. Ethan glanced at Zero, who sat quietly beside him, her expression unreadable. He had been trying to understand her role in all of this, but the truth was, he still didn't fully know what to make of her. She had helped him, yes, but there was always a sense that there was more to her than met the eye. Finally, after what felt like hours, the council members fell into an uneasy silence. The tension in the room was unbearable. Everyone waited for someone to make a decision, to take the first step toward peace. Ethan knew it was time to act. Stood up, his voice steady but firm. "I know we all have our own interests, our own desires," Ethan said, his eyes sweeping over the room. "But if we don't work together, if we don't find common ground, then we're all going to lose. The galaxy cannot afford another war. We've seen enough destruction. We've seen enough lives lost. We have the power to choose a different path." He paused, letting his words sink in. For a moment, the room was silent, the representatives exchanging looks. Ethan could see the doubt in their eyes, the uncertainty that had been clouding their judgment. "I understand your fears," Ethan continued, his voice softer now. "I understand that it's hard to trust. But the only way forward is together. We can build something better. We can create a future where all of our people can thrive. But it starts with trust. It starts with compromise." Ethan looked to Zira, her eyes meeting his. In that moment, he felt a deep sense of understanding pass between them. She had been right. He didn't have to carry this burden alone. He had the support of others, and together they could accomplish something great. Zero gave him a small, approving nod, and Ethan felt a surge of confidence. He knew what needed to be done. He couldn't force anyone to agree, but he could show them the importance of working together, could show them the future they could have. After what felt like an eternity, one of the alien representatives stood. The room fell silent once again as everyone turned their attention to him. He was from a faction that had been particularly resistant to the terms of the peace agreement. But as he looked around the room, his gaze softened. "I don't agree with everything," he said, his voice hesitant. "But maybe Ethan's right. Maybe we've been too focused on our differences. Maybe it's time we think about the future, not just our own interests." The others looked at him, surprised. Slowly, one by one, the representatives began to nod, agreeing to move forward with the negotiations. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. They had reached a compromise, and that was enough to build on. As the room erupted into quiet discussion, Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't over yet, but they had made progress. And it had happened because they had been willing to trust each other, to work together. After the meeting, Ethan and Zero walked down the hall together, the weight of the day finally starting to lift. They had done it. It brought the factions together, even if it was just the beginning of the process. "You did well," Zero said, her voice soft but proud. "You trusted yourself, and you trusted others." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of pride he hadn't felt before. "I couldn't have done it without you." Zero's expression softened. "And you don't have to. We're in this together." As they walked side by side, Ethan realized that Zero wasn't just a partner in this mission. She was his friend, his ally, and someone he could trust. Together, they had achieved something that had once seemed impossible. Together, they would face whatever challenges the future held.